Welcome to my LinkedIn Live sessions. Today we're here with Chris Houston, and it's an absolute pleasure, and I'm very proud to have you with us, Chris. Do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're up to now?
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Mitch, for giving me the opportunity to connect with your network. And I was lucky enough to go to an event at the Yacht Club a month ago, and I will continue to do those in the future, mate, because great opportunity. I'm trying to grow my little business, but in particular in and around our local area in Newcastle, something I'm very passionate about. Previous to doing mental health workplace training like I am now, I basically had two careers. One of those was in professional sport. Lucky enough to play rugby league at the highest level here in Australia for 10, 11 years, and then played a little bit overseas in England in the Super League as well. So throughout that journey, very grateful, a great time. I would have loved to have won a comp. I didn't quite get there, but so many memories, so many learnings, and something, although I retired at the right time, I do miss it dearly because it's just such a great opportunity.
Yeah, mate, when I say I'm proud to have you on, it's because, I grew up watching you play, and it was a similar position too. I was a prop as a younger kid, and then I grew into a second rower.
Yeah.
But I actually had you on my fantasy teams. I was always watching your game with keen interest because I always saw you as a different player, how you could run the lines dynamically. And maybe you can touch on this too, but I thought that your shaping was quite different to most of the other players in your roles at the time, where they'd sort of be a lot more blocky and they'd play much more linear style. Whereas I saw the way you'd catch the ball off your hips and then you'd run on an angle and you'd hit the ball off the halfback so much quicker than everyone else. Was there anything that sort of stood out for you during your playing career that made you realise that you were different and, you had something more to give?
Yeah, a little bit. No, thanks for that, Mitch. Look, I was maybe like a little bit of a hybrid forward, so to speak. I could play back row on the edges, but I also enjoyed a lot of time in the middle as well. And whether that was playing prop or playing lock, the role when I played, that it didn't differ too much. But I probably, or without a doubt, I was definitely never one of the strongest forwards. So I did have to rely a lot more on my timing to run and receive the ball and timing off whether it was the hooker or the playmakers. And the other thing was probably my fitness and, playing longer minutes. Hopefully the big fellas would get a little bit tired and that's when I could make some inroads. But again, great time. But even your style would change sometimes game to game depending on your opponents. From when we started, I debuted in 2007. And I finished playing in basically 2018, and the game changed so much in that time.
Yeah, definitely, and much more fast. And like you said, the cardio increased a lot too. Like you would have been maybe one of the only guys to play a full 80 minutes in the middle, right?
Yeah, most forwards, the interchange I think was 12, then it dropped down to 10. But most forwards, even a back row, would get substituted some stage throughout the game. But yeah, 80 minutes was pretty standard. As I got older, I was looking for a bit more of a rest.
I love it, mate. And yeah, thanks for sharing too. I guess what's funny to me, like, do you still get noticed around town when you go down to the shops and things like that?
Yeah, I do a little bit. Definitely not as much as some of the other guys and some of my great teammates that I still hang out with. But on occasions for sure. Yep. Sometimes I get recognised or confused with my brother, and people start thanking me for plumbing jobs I've done that I never did. I do. But Newcastle is great. Like I've started my career in Sydney, and there's a lot of different teams. So not everyone you bump into is really a fan of your club, but not in Newcastle. Generally, people are really supportive, encouraging, and they love the Knights, as I do too.
Mate, we sure do. You're a man of the people, Chris. So what keeps you busy now, mate? And I want to hear more about In-Minds training too. Obviously, I'm aware of what it is and what you do, but some more of that deeper impact and what really fires you up about the work that you do now.
Yeah, well, as I just mentioned at the start, one career that I followed was the sporting career. The other one was down a road of teaching. I graduated with a Bachelor of Education from Wollongong University in 2007 before I came up here to Newcastle. And towards my back end of my playing days when I was over in the UK, I actually started to study counselling when I was over there. I had a chat and teamed up with the NHS through our footy club and started to build wellbeing programs to teach in schools, because I wanted to use the skills I'd learnt through my degree in education with all the professional sports side of it, and get in early with that early intervention and teach our kids some resilience, a little bit around exercise, nutrition, but mindset and goal setting. And I was always really passionate about that.
Can we double click on that for a sec, Chris?
Yeah.
What is early prevention or early intervention, as you said?
Yeah. So, well, even as an adult, we can have early intervention, and that's probably by understanding our own warning signs or signs and symptoms, and then having the toolkit or the resilience or the support to improve our situation, which isn't always easy before it gets too late. But then we're thinking about early intervention in terms of timeline. So, everything from the moment you're born, trying to have, and it's not your choice when you're born, but a support network around you of parents and carers, and then through that schooling life and starting to develop these foundations of resilience. And every expert in the space will tell you, with physical or mental health, the earlier we get in, the better outcomes we can have. Not that it's always easy.
Fantastic, mate. And I love that you were overseas. You're in the UK and you could see something that you were passionate about and you stood up and you spoke about it too. So what were some of those early changes that you were able to identify and, implement over there?
So the program I put together was based around the 5 ways to wellbeing. It is taught now in Australian schools as well. 5 pillars around that resilience. And then I would educate with that and then put some different stories around it, just sporting stories or relatable stories to whether it was youth or now into the workplace. And it was actually at that time when I thought my main focus, and it was on that younger generation. I actually went and sat in an adult mental health first aid course. One of our teammates at the time was going through a bit of a rough patch, and our wellbeing manager said, "Oh, Chris, do you mind going to the course and taking him with you? And, not only will it be great for both of you, but you can encourage him to go through that process as well." And
wow.
I remember sitting over there in the UK, the guy delivering it, he actually was a health and safety expert in the construction industry, but was delivering the England model of the mental health first aid. And I just loved the course. I learnt so much. And I really just resonated with the facilitator. And I thought, wow, I could definitely see myself teaching this. And it's a bit easier to control 30 kids in a classroom as well.
Yeah.
So that was my first taste into, mental health education rather than just wellbeing programs in schools. And as soon as I hung the boots up, I had a fair idea on the path I wanted to follow, and that was a big part of it.
Fantastic. Yeah, and I can tell you've always had a direction and the next thing in mind, because I know that, a lot of professional athletes and professional players, they struggle with that identity crisis after their career. Is that something that you had any challenges with, or do you think that you had a pretty steady progression? What was that experience like for you?
Both. Yeah. I was pretty comfortable and confident with my plan, but it still brought a whole lot of challenges with it. So I can only imagine and try and empathise with other people, men and women, that have just been in any industry for so long, and then it's a pretty sudden change, whether it's injury, bullying, harassment in the workplace. It could be any reason you change. So yeah, it takes a long time, new purpose, new identity. But then for us, we were not only changing jobs, we had a young family, and we're actually changing countries and coming back to Australia again. So there's, people say moving house is one of the most stressful things you can do. And we just threw that in, another ingredient in the boiling pot. So yeah, it was, looking back, we always learn from those challenges, but it's not easy sometimes. There's a lot of self-doubt that creeps in, and, even income. You go from a pretty high income playing professional sport to, okay, I've got a family to support. I've got to make changes. Thank God I had some qualifications, but you got to swallow your pride and start at the bottom of the ladder again, and then slowly try and work your way up.
Yeah. Oh, mate, I can relate to that in a way too. I think what you did is far beyond my reach, perhaps. But, certainly that piece there where you talk about the identity and giving yourself the time to go through it as well. I think without some of the awareness work that I've done in my mental health journey, I probably wouldn't have approached change so head on as I do now. You know, in business, in life, pretty well any context, having that mental resilience and experience and framework to reference on gives me more confidence to actually go and take more risks, or to actually, you know, do the things that I truly want to be doing in life. So, mate, hats off to you. And I love now that you're trying to pass that on to everybody else.
Yeah, thanks, Mitch. And, you know, without knowing every detail about, you know, your journey, and it's probably a private thing there as well, sometimes like we learn these skills from a young age. I was lucky enough to get a bit of that probably from my parents, but learn a lot of it through sport. But some people don't have access to that, but it doesn't mean you can't, whether it is speak to a psychologist or find a mentor or get around some positive influencing people and change your network and help you through that. It's none of this. No one wrote the book saying you've got to do it on your own. We can bring people in to help us.
Totally. I love it, mate. And let's talk about the workplace stuff that you do now too. You touched on bullying, harassment, change management, you know, some of those big corporate sounding topics. How do you help people on such a personal issue in the workplace, and also do that for the larger organizations as well?
Yeah. So up until probably 2 years ago, companies would invest in a mental health strategy for different reasons. You know, and there may have been a crisis and it was reactive, or, you know, absenteeism's gone through the roof, or some thankfully as well could see the positive benefits, but it was normally pretty reactive and organisations doing the bare minimum. And it was probably what they called tertiary intervention, which was having an EAP to ring, which is an employee assistance program, free confidential support, but not many workers had confidence in using that. So it would just sat there and sometimes doesn't get utilised, although it is a great resource, and a return to work process. So if somebody is struggling, have time off, get the help, whatever it is you might need, but let's try and get you back to work as quick as we can. And that is better than nothing, but it's nowhere near good enough. So
still very reactive.
It is. So then, you know, there was a shift into the secondary intervention space, and that is whether we see ourselves declining in our mental health or well-being, or whether we see our fellow workers declining, how do we either improve our own awareness, our own resilience, increase those help-seeking behaviours, again, to try and get onto it early before it's impacting work and our families, or how do we give our leaders, managers, supervisors the skills to identify a struggle, start the conversation, and then help and support that employee. So basically that's where I sit now within Minds Training, is those workshops, that training that give you those skills to be able to do that. But then 18 months ago, roughly, there was a big change in Australia/New South Wales, Safe Work New South Wales, and what they call psychosocial hazards or psychosocial safety. And that is, how can an organisation set up both the workplace and the systems in there to proactively manage any contributing factors that could be leading to poor mental health. And in there are those things, whether it is bullying and harassment, whether it is managing change, where you work, the style of work, you know, even things down to like if you're a truck driver, you know, the comfort of your seat and things like that, the conditions of the workplace, plus the skills around it. So I'm not a work health and safety expert by any means, okay, but there are certain things that organisations need to do. There's certain guidelines that come out of that, and then I help assist with the training and the connection with the workforce.
Fantastic. And so that psychosocial risk, is that a mandatory compliance passed down by the government?
It is. And the states vary a little bit with their codes of practice. But in New South Wales, if you've got an organisation with 50 people or more, their recommendations are now that you have to identify your hazards and you have to have basically a mental health or a psychosocial safety framework to be working towards.
That's great, yeah.
But the other thing, just quickly, Mitch, as well, like workforce is under 50, and to be honest, most businesses probably fit into that category. And in and around Newcastle, there's a lot of fantastic organisations that get awareness, they get mental health, they want to support their teams, and thankfully they've been reaching out, or I've been working hard on a bit of networking to give them some skills and some sessions as well, because it's not just the big business that has to do it, it's everyone.
Totally. And the impact of how many leaders can, reach out amongst their communities too. The impact can be spread so much further as well. So
Exactly.
fantastic, Chris. And I wanted to ask you too, you mentioned the five pillars of resilience program that you've delivered in the UK.
Yeah.
What programs are you delivering here in Australia?
Yeah, great. So for training, which is usually targeted at the manager, supervisor, leadership level, the two main courses I deliver is one, the mental health first aid course. Great course, probably the most well-known and recognised course in Australia. And then the other one I deliver, which is another great course, it's a 6-hour course. It's called the mental health response course. That can be tailored a little bit to the workplace. Both of those courses cover general mental health, main mental illnesses, how to have conversations, and what to do in the event of a crisis. And they're both accredited courses. In terms of then workshops for the broader workforce, whether it is general awareness or resilience or things like Are You OK Day, chats or connection, there's those ones that are shorter but for broader, or the extensive training.
Fantastic, mate. And we're touching on 16 minutes here, so
yeah,
we'll wrap it up shortly. But was there anything you wanted to share just with the audience here, or anything off the top of your head?
Yeah, thanks, Mitch. Probably the first thing, if anyone watching is interested in any workplace training, or even just having a chat about it, no doubt my contact details will be somewhere below, or it's just Chris at in-minds.co. But I've actually got 2 events coming up in the next week or so. So on the 7th of April, been lucky enough to link with ASR Recruitment in town in Carrington. Christy Bannister in there and her team, we're putting a day together on World Health Day, and it's about leadership in workplace wellbeing. It's just a 1-hour lunch and learn from 12 to 1, a little bit like we've touched on today, but also joined with Nicole from NLC, having a great HR lens on it there as well. So just a good introductory little fun lunch and learn networking event.
And I'll be there. For anyone who wants to come along, I'll be there.
Beautiful. Yeah, let us know so we can get the catering if there's a few more. And then, on the following, that Thursday, which is the 10th of April, at Broadmeadow, I'm actually hosting one of the mental health response courses, a 6-hour course, but accredited training, and again, designed for those leaders, and there's still a few spots available for that. So one thing I want to do is work with individual companies, but throughout the year to help our community, I'm going to host some regular events that people can opt into at a time that suits them.
That's awesome, Chris. You've done lots of great work since your playing career, mate, and I'm loving the impact you're creating in Newey. I want to say thanks so much for coming on today. Any last closing thoughts before we wrap it up?
No, just a massive thank you, Mitch, to yourself for giving me the opportunity to share. Happy to try and help any way I can, and go the Knights.
Fantastic. Go the Knights.